We are going to study today the two production methods, techniques that businesses use. One is called capital intensive and second is called labor intensive. We'll define both and we'll talk about that what are the factors that decide what type of the production method business is going to use, whether labor intensive or capital intensive. Let's talk about capital intensive first. Capital intensive is a method of production that uses more machinery as compared to workers. And fewer workers. Usually, the production businesses are capital intensive. For example, a steel manufacturing factory will be capital intensive business. What is the labor intensive? That use more workers and less machinery. More workers, fewer machinery. Usually the businesses that are service oriented are labor intensive businesses. Okay. If we talk about the details of this topic, businesses should optimize resources, land, labor, capital in order to meet business objectives. This optimization of capital and labor can often substitute each other. Sometimes business can use machinery that can substitute some labor, and sometimes business can use some labor that can substitute capital. Okay. Sometimes in some areas, the handmade products are more popular and businesses can use more labor there. And sometimes some standardized goods are more popular and business can use more capital over there. So this is not an easy decision generally. Business will have to make complex decision in order to get the right balance between the capital and the labor at each stage of production process. It's not the case that every time for the one production you are using the same method. You can use different methods because I told you it's a complex decision overall. Okay. What can influence these decisions of capital and uses? The factors that can influence these decisions. Okay. First of all, the design of the product. Okay. Products with many parts, such as an airplane, for example, is complicated. To produce, it's harder to get the capital labor mix right. And you cannot tell exactly that what amount of labor you can use and what amount of capital you can use. But generally, in the case of such complex product processes, the capital is more important and it is more used as compared to the labor. Second is finance. If we want to use more capital intensive technique, we will have to put a lot of finance into the business. We will have to use a lot of things. The businesses who have limited sources of finance can easily use the labor intensive methods, but they will have to sacrifice the latest technology that is being built in the capital. The businesses who are using more labor, yes, they can create more different and creative designs, but if they are new and they have less finance, the labor intensive is always better for them. But if they have more finance and they can invest more into the technology, the capital intensive will be better for them. It also depends on the type of the product. Service industry usually tend to be more labor intensive. For example, your school is a labor intensive business, but manufacturing industries usually tend to be capital intensive. For example, a steel mill will be capital intensive, as I told you earlier too. Okay. It also depends on the availability of inputs. whether the labor is actually available or not, whether it's costly or cheaper, whether the capital is actually available or not, whether the capital is costly or cheaper. In some areas, like in Pakistan, the labor is cheap when it's widely available because of the unemployment. But as compared to the Europe, for example, labor is less available, and that is costly too. So it varies. In Pakistan, for example, the interest rate would be high, the capital would be costly. But as compared to Canada, the interest rate will be low, the capital will be cheap. So these are different bases on the basis of which you decide what type of the production method you are going to use. We will talk about the benefits of both. Let's talk about the benefits of capital intensive technique. First of all, it can be cheaper than the labor intensive in the long run, because the capital won't be asking you to increase the salaries, for example. It can be cheaper in the long run as compared to labor. With the capital intensive techniques, greater efficiency, greater accuracy is possible. It's always easier to manage. It do not have the labor issues. Capital does not come late. Like you just have to start the machinery and start the operations. It can work 24/7. But we have certain limitations for that too. First of all, capital is expensive to set up. So first time cost will be high. Second, it's inflexible. It's only suited to one task. If you will have to shift to the other task, capital cannot. If machinery breaks down, long production delays. For the personal services, it's not suitable. Like for the education, for the school, colleges, for the barber, for example, for the doctor, for example, for the lawyer, for example, it's not suitable. Come to the second type of technique, that is labor intensive. It will be directly opposite. Benefits. Flexible, because labor can do multitasking, labor can be involved in different tasks that is not their original specialty, for example, sometimes. Cheaper in some areas where unemployment is high. Workers can always communicate new ideas that capital cannot. And it's very suitable to personal services. Talking about the limitations, the wages of workers can raise over time, making them more expensive. Making them more expensive. Labor are difficult to manage as compared to machinery. Labor can go on strike, machinery cannot. Labor cannot work constantly 24 by 7. They always take holidays, rest periods. Labor can be unreliable. They can take absentees, lateness, or etc. etc. So this was a brief comparison between the labor intensive technique and the capital intensive techniques.